joining us right now, and we don't want to make him wait, Vince Redmond. He's one of our favorite people on the planet. Vince is a wealth of knowledge because he was a behavioral therapist for many years and then became a licensed marriage and family therapist. So he's such a gift to all of us because he gets both sides of it. I always tell the story about how I went to a therapist at some point and she said, well, after hearing about everything, I can tell you there's one thing you should get rid of because it's so stressful. It's that ABA therapy. That's what's stressing you out. You should get rid of that. And that was the end of that, right? So it's just a treat to have somebody who gets it from both sides. So Vince, you are the director of family services at CARD. You're just everything about you is wonderful. So thank you for joining us again. And and we asked you to come today to talk with us about the big D, depression. And what a happy topic, right?
All right.
But a relevant topic, right?
Right.
We're coming off the holidays, New Year, it's cold outside. It actually is something that we want to talk about. It's not something to be shameful of. It's not something to keep quiet about. We actually want to talk about it because the first step in making it better, the first step in getting more support, the first step in feeling better is actually bringing it up. And so I think this is a perfect time for this topic.
Absolutely.
Are you finding more parents with depression this time of year?
We do. Yeah, I actually do, both at CARD and in my private practice. You find this time of year to have more depression going through for multiple reasons, obviously family dynamics and things that are going on. But this time of the year in the winter and the cold and the celebrations of the holidays concluding and everyone going back to kind of their regular lives or their regular schedules oftentimes can bring forth some depression or depressive feelings. It might not actually be a complete depressive episode, but having depressed feelings for multiple reasons. But yeah, I would say this time of year it's more prevalent.
I also find that this time of the year, change is hard for me.
Yeah, me too.
I struggle with change, and this time of year, I feel like even if I try really hard to make as little change as possible, it seems like the world has decided to make January that we're going to make it all tipsy-turvy. Your insurance changes. Like even if you kept the same insurance, what they cover and how they cover, and it's a new year and you've got new co-pays again. I mean,
Your ABA schedule changes.
like there's just so many things that change this time of
Schools
year,
change.
and I always talk about the bug on the lawnmower syndrome. That sometimes I feel like I'm a bug riding on the lawnmower and everything's just hitting me
Right.
so fast that I'd rather go back to the holidays where it's hectic but it's nice, because this is all stuff. But so there's that on top of it in January. Then
Yeah.
and then I just teased and said it's tax time,
Right.
Because we're all getting those forms, and now we have to take care of that too. That just makes me want to run into the ocean.
And put my head in the
It
sand.
makes us all want to run and
Yeah,
hide.
exactly.
Run and hide, exactly. But I know I've noticed in the last couple of weeks, just the people writing into the show and calling in the office, that everybody's feeling it right now, and it isn't just the anxiety and the stress. Everybody's feeling a little bit of the depression. So and their kids are too. And I just thought this is a great topic. You and I talked about it and said this is the thing to talk about. So Vince, we've identified that pretty much everybody's feeling it at some point. And is there still a stigma? Are people still feeling like they can't own up to it if that's what they're feeling? Do you see that in life, Vince?
I do, and that's why I had said that at the beginning, because I think there still is a lot of stigma out there about reaching out for help in general, either it be from depression or anxiety, or sometimes it's just confusion about things, right? Especially in our world of ABA, there's so much out there, so many things going on, so many different treatments and opinions and behavior plans and so forth, that it can be very overwhelming. And you see that there's still, it's not nearly as bad as it used to be. Let me preface that. But there still is the stigma that people are embarrassed to reach out for help. They're more reserved to ask for help. They don't want to reach out because they might feel that that's a judgment on them and their inabilities to either handle the stress or handle their situations. Or even just managing their emotions. So that first step is really just not being shy about asking for help.
And who can they ask for help from? What would be
Yeah.
the first line of defense there?
Well, again, depending on their situation, the first thing I would, if they're in an ABA agency, the first thing is to reach out to your supervisor. Reach out to your clinical care supervisor, the one who's in charge of your program, and let them know what's going on. Sometimes just a nice rapport, nice dialogue with them could help alleviate some of the emotions. However, if it's more serious than that, then they can get you in contact with maybe more services within their organization, or they can give you contacts to resources outside the organization that can help, provide some professional counseling for you.
There you go. I was just thinking about it when you were saying it. We talked last night about the fact that neither one of us are shy talking about our own circumstances, and I certainly have suffered from chronic depression in my life, and sometimes it's more manageable than other times, right? But for me, I don't think it's that I feel embarrassed or ashamed to say and ask for help when I'm feeling it. It's more that when I get low, it doesn't occur to me that something else could help and that talking to someone could help. And do you find that, Vince, that people just, because when I'm low, I just feel like, well, what could anybody do?
Right.
I just feel low. But it can help tremendously.
Sure.
To
And
talk
that's
to
where
somebody.
the hopelessness comes in, and that those depressive thoughts that come into our minds that nobody understands me or no one will be able to help me if I can't help myself. There's no help out there. There's a lot of those depressive thoughts or automatic thoughts that come into our minds when we're that low, right? When our emotions and our abilities feel so depressed that we start to believe that there is no help out there, or that help that is out there isn't right for you or isn't going to be effective for you. However, it absolutely is, right? Everyone can benefit from counseling if they're feeling depressed or anxious or overwhelmed.
And Nancy, what about you?
Well, I've suffered from depression on and off my whole life. And you're right that sometimes when you're in the middle of it, you tend to pull inward and you feel like that's the time you can't reach out.
Yeah.
But in order to be there for our kids, we really have to take our oxygen first, so to speak.
Amen to that,
And
sister.
yeah. And it can have an effect on your child's development and how well they're doing.
Yeah.
They pick up on these things, right, Vince?
Well, and that's a great point, Nancy. I think it also travels through the entire family, right? I think sometimes we believe that our children aren't aware of our emotions, or they're not aware of how we're feeling, and that we put on a good enough mask or a good enough disguise to be able to shield them from that. But that's not true. Our kids are actually very good about identifying our behaviors and our emotions, and knowing when we're sad, depressed. And you're right. If we're not able to manage, it's going to be much more difficult to manage a family, manage behaviors, manage an APA program, manage a marriage, right? These are things that oftentimes are that struggle or that are damaged if we don't seek help, as soon as we feel that we're depressed.
Right.
And it's important for us in all things to model behavior that we want to see in our kids, and that if we are feeling something and need to get help, to model that behavior to our kids. Because I want to shift the conversation now to talking about depression in our children, in our teens, and in our adults, because we know that statistically they are more likely to experience depression, and that it would be easy for a parent to miss the symptoms. I know very close to home here, we have a colleague that recently, her daughter committed suicide at a very young age.
And there's been an increase in suicides among younger children.
And I know that for that mom, we're going to have her hopefully on the show to talk about, because she says, as distraught as she is over it, she wants to make sure that other parents get the message and know how to help their kids. So maybe, Vince, if we talk a little bit about understanding the difference between when our kids are upset and potentially in danger of committing suicide. How do we recognize
Well,
that?
and that's a great question, because oftentimes the symptoms of depression for a young, a young child, a young teen, are different than those of full mature adults, right? So when you're looking at teens, or you're looking at your young adolescents, and you feel that something emotionally might be wrong, maybe they're being picked on at school, maybe they're struggling with their academics. You when you think of depression, you think they're going to be sad, they're going to be cry a lot, they're going to isolate, they're going to be by themselves. However, if you have kids that are acting out, that are aggressive, that are hanging out with the wrong crowd, getting social appraisal and approval from crowds that might be unhealthy, they're experimenting in drugs and alcohol. These are also signs of depression in young teens. So when we see this, sometimes I think families just write that off as, this is just a phase they're going through as a teenager, or this is a developmental stage. If it's out of their typical norm, right, out of their personality norm, these are signs that there could be depression, and that we would want to address that right away.
And how would we address it, Vince? Is it a quick phone call to get them in to talk to somebody, and where do we find that person? I just feel like that's a ginormous hurdle
Yeah.
of saying, okay, in this moment this is scaring me, so I'm going to get a professional. And where do you even find them? And that feels like it would be something that would take days, weeks, and months, and that it might be something that you need to hurry.
That is true. It is. It could take time, and a lot of that could come from actually, like you were saying, finding a good fit for your child, and also the resistance you're going to experience from the teen. Right? Very rarely is a teen right off the bat going to say, "Okay, let's go to counseling. Let's make it better."
Right.
Because oftentimes they're in denial. They're still very angry. They still don't understand what is going on either, because it could be something about their past, it could be grieving, it could be that they're being picked on at school, whatever it may be. So you're right. So I think that as a parent, we need to first start talking with our kids more, being more involved in what they're doing, being more involved in their daily activities, being more involved in their friendships, keeping them involved in things that are positive, like either it be school activities, after school activities, academics, athletics, arts, those types of things, to make sure that their peer groups are peer groups that we want them to be with. And again, slowly integrating, don't just all of a sudden now be a hovering parent and is now involved in everything when we never were before, but slowly integrate in and be more involved with your child. Talk to them more. Don't always ask them about their emotions, just to some extent, and this is going to sound a little funny, but get to know them again. Get to know them on where they are right now, right? Johnny of 10 is no longer Johnny of 15. Johnny that's 15 is a much different person, he's experiencing things that he's never experienced before. And we want to be able to get to know that Johnny. And when we do that, we establish a new relationship where that can open up communication, and then maybe we're able to kind of turn the tables then. But if not, and we still think professional counseling would be helpful, at least now we have a good working relationship and a trusting relationship where we can then go to the next level, and there'll be a lot less teenage resistance.
Okay. All of that is so helpful.
Yeah.
I feel like this subject is it's a little overwhelming for me, isn't it for you?
Yeah.
I mean, as much as I hate to do when we do shows where we talk about how to estate plan for when we're not here, and I
Right.
find myself like, being like, I
Head
don't
in
want
the
to think about
sand.
that. I don't want
Yeah.
to. It's the same thing. Like I get a little paralyzed.
Yeah, you get
thinking about, I would rather do anything in my life than have my child be depressed and take his own life. Like anything. I'd rather
Right.
do anything
Right.
in the world. And yet I don't feel empowered as a parent to, because if you haven't been there and you don't know,
Right.
I'm sure that, parents who've been through this have a wealth of knowledge to say to us, I wished I'd done this, I wished I'd done that. And Vince, I appreciate all this, because what you just said about noticing a change in behavior,
Yeah.
that I was like, oh, okay, well that's something I can latch on to. That's something that I can keep an eye out for. Are there other things that are like that are sort of hallmarks? It's not a one size fits all, right?
It's not, but you're right. I mean, and that's why we say a shift in behavior from their typical norm, right? So, as we have kids that are way energetic and they're off the walls and they're playing sports and they're doing this and they're doing that. A dramatic shift in their behavior might be more isolation, more slowing down, more inclusive. But then we have other kids that maybe are a little bit more passive, a little bit more, behind the scenes, and all of a sudden now they're aggressive and acting out and want to be at the center of attention and are spending more time with groups that might not be healthy. Any dramatic shift in behavior, whatever that may be for your child, that is a hallmark cue, right? That's a cue that we want to look into, or a clue that we want to look into to see what's going on. It's not always a negative, like crying and isolating. It could be it could be anger. It could be a resistance to going to school now. It could be only wanting to play with one certain friend for a child who used to be very charismatic and play with multiple friends, right? So any dramatic shift would be something to cue us in that something's not right. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean depression, but something's going on and we need to dig in and see what's going on.
Yeah, and I'm thinking even, when we get to a certain age and kids are becoming interested in, romantic relationships potentially, that even a child acting like everything is happy, but only spending time with that person is something that we need to monitor, because we see, we just saw this a couple of years ago, that there was a young girl on the autism spectrum that there'd been a behavior change, and mom thought she was happier, but she was only spending time with one friend. And what ended up happening, what they found, because then she went missing, and they discovered that friend was introducing her to somebody that she should not have been introduced to, who was taking advantage. And fortunately, eventually they located her and got her back home. But, like all the things that we don't want to have happen to our children.
Right.
So even watching when that restrictive behavior, if it's just around one person, even if they appear to be happy, could be a thing. Gosh, it is overwhelming. And then how about for our kids that it's difficult to communicate to begin with?
Right.
And to say, that they don't really understand how they're feeling anyway, so to get that baseline is hard. What about that, Vince, for the kids who aren't talkative, for whatever reason, whether they have verbal communication but they don't talk about their feelings, or they do not have vocal speech? How do we know?
And it goes back to the same thing. Look for behavior change, right?
Okay.
Are they more grumpy? Are they more aggressive? Are they more sad? Are they more withdrawn? Are they, more, and I use this word loosely, but more flirty, right? Are they, is that out of character for someone who's more shy and passive and cautious? All of a sudden becomes, like you said, it looks like they're being real happy and real flirty. That could also be a cue that something's going on. They're compensating for something. They might be overcompensating for a lack of self-esteem, or that they're feeling lower on their abilities, or less confident in their abilities. So we need to look at what's going on around them. And that goes back to what we were saying earlier about then become more involved. Be more involved in their therapies. Be more involved in their treatments. Be in better communication with teachers, administrators, and supervisors, so that we can see are these behavior changes changing in different environments? Are they hanging out with different people at school? Or maybe they're being challenged more in their ABA program, and that's really hurting their self-confidence. There's lots of different things to do, but being more involved at that point is absolutely necessary.
Yeah, and sometimes that means, just like when they were little, meeting them wherever they are, playing with whatever thing that they like to play. I think, Nancy's a great example of, you're such a good mom, that Wyatt loves to paint. And so often in the night, if I'm talking to you in the evening, Wyatt's painting, and you're sitting there with him while he's painting, and he's asking you questions about, what color is this, Mom? What would you consider this color? I always just think that is like the sweetest thing in the world. And I am one of those parents where my child has gotten very adept at, he would rather for me to be away. He wants to play his video games with his friends. He doesn't want me in the room because, as he says, I wreck everything. Thank you. Because, like, there's some level of violence in everything, and I go, I don't like that. And so he doesn't want me there. He's like, go away. I don't need you to see this. But I need to push it a little bit. I need to make him. Nothing makes him happier than if somebody who doesn't know how to play VR plays VR with him, because he loves to show it. He loves to teach it to somebody.
Right.
And I need to, do more of
Virtual
that.
reality, for those that don't know what that is.
Yes, the virtual reality.
Social media. Don't forget social media, right? I mean,
Right.
make sure you're friended, make sure you're following your child's social media, because oftentimes you'll see trends there before you actually notice it at home.
I don't think either. Jem's not big social media.
Neither is Wyatt.
Jem texts.
Yeah.
And he knows that every once in a while I grab his phone and I go through all the texts and I comment on, what's being said and whatever. But thank goodness we have not gotten into that yet. And I'm hoping we don't get into that.
But that's something that parents need to look into, obviously, what their child is involved in on social media, right?
Right. And I know personally, we've had friends and family members that we've caught, different things, because we've had different family members that have followed or been part of their social media where there's been depression, anxiety, suicidal ideations, and we've been able to get in contact with the parents, and the parents had no idea this was going on. And so we've been able to, help different friends and family members, find help for their child or their children, when the parents didn't know that was happening. So that support network that we all have around us, not only for our kids but for our families, is also very helpful as well.
Yeah, Jem has a Facebook account, but we have said no to the Snapchat because that's the one that they can say something and it goes away. And so you can't check it. So we've said there's no Snapchat. I need to look, and I don't think he has an Instagram, but I'm just realizing I need to look at that. We all need to stay in tune with that.
On top of that for our kids,
Yes, because if our kids I know people who have kids who are very active on Facebook. A lot of kids are in the autism spectrum are not as into Facebook, and I think that's a blessing.
I agree.
Although I do think I wish somebody would teach a class in how to be on Facebook and how to instant message for individuals on the autism spectrum, because I know somebody can instant message me, and the way in which they do it, I'm not a person who can diagnose autism, but I can go, that's one of my friends on the autism spectrum.
Right.
The way they instant message, and I know that they have expressed to me, I'm frustrated. I write to people and they don't write back, and I've said, well, but because you need to say this, not this. I wish somebody would teach that class, Vince.
Well, and that can be part of an ABA program. I know for me, I've worked with several young adults over the years, especially, as social media has continued to boom, to actually appropriate, what's going on social media, how to converse during social media, what to look at, what not to look at, how to friend or defriend or follow or not follow. There's so many different things, but that actually is a learning skill that's, as much as we see the positives and negatives of social media, it's not going anywhere. So we can build programs, and we have, on how to appropriately use social media as for social, for social reasons and nothing more.
Well, Vince, you're amazing. Nancy, did you have a question?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
That was.
You're absolutely amazing, Vince, and we just adore you. And you're such a gift to the autism community, and especially to CARD. As you're the director of family services and help so many of us with so many different things, myself included. So we just want to thank you for being with us once a month and helping us to sort of get a handle on some of these things and give great advice.
Not a problem. My pleasure.
Thank you so much for being with us, Vince.
All right, ladies. Have a great rest of your week.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right, we're going to take a short break, and then we're going to come back. I'm going to talk a little bit about tomorrow's show and something that we're doing live on Friday.
Oh,
so stick with us. Back with more Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy after these messages.